You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Oh, Big Delhi. So I want to rate what they've done here. And I want to rate Mitch Marsh because he seems like a lovely bloke. But a couple of World Cup performances with, let's be honest, a pretty ordinary IPL history isn't that convincing. His record isn't very good against spin. And in the middle overs where he'll be batting, that's all other teams will be targeting. But what I like about Delhi here is that they've kind of accounted for that. They've just like, you know what, he's got a good record against pace. He's in a good vein of form. He's being managed by Ricky Ponting, who's going to know him inside and out. And what they've done is put people around him who are good against spin. Like they bought David Warner. I think that's a good, smart pickup. Yes, he's got a bit between his teeth now because he's got to react for what happened to him at Sunrisers Hyderabad, who kind of hung him out to dry after him being one of their better players over the last few years. He's recovered some form as well in the last few months, especially at the World Cup against, let's be honest, some lesser bowling. But they've also got Rishabh Pant around him and even Rovman Powell, who was happy to blitz kind of Livingston, Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali when they played recently. So they've kind of got the balance, I think, in that lineup, which I think is good. They've overspent for the Lord, but we love the Lord in this show. 10.75 crore for a medium pacer.
Anyone deserves 10.75 crore for being a medium pacer.
Yeah, it's him. It is him. Shard will make things happen, Tagore. I was loving that. And we thought they would invest in domestic youth players and maybe target one or two from the Royals. And they did that, right? Sakaria has joined, who was probably the best of that bunch, probably ahead of Tyagi in that run. And then for Yash Dal and Vicky Otswal as well, who are both part of the under-19s contingent. So that, again, is looking good. I think Sakaria for 4.2 crore is actually good to what others were going for in that bracket as well. I don't think that some of them, even like Krishna's faster than him and offers something a little bit different being the right-hander and he's the left-hander. But again, I'm kind of putting them in the same bucket. I know it's quite a big bucket there, Jack, but kind of those domestic pacers, actually the variance there, the people paying 10 crore for some of that stuff, to get him for nearly 4 was a good bit of business. I think getting Mustafizur Rahman, the Fizz at 2 is brilliant. He is a consistent
that's one of the
performer.
buys of the tournament.
Yeah, he's a consistent performer. He's underrated. I think his skill set will suit the pitches in Mumbai as well. And people don't know they are only playing in Mumbai. They're playing at 3 different grounds this year. I think that is a great buy. KS Bharat at 2 is also good business because it depleted their rivals, right? Sometimes you're looking for domestic talent and what do we need versus what do the other team need? And I think taking KS Bharat out of that lineup is a really good thing. I think they've addressed their problem from last year. They lacked firepower in that lineup, but I'm not 100% sure their whole team has been improved. For example, if I was to think about the resilience in their side, they don't have as much depth, I don't think. So like if Nortje goes down injured, and he's been injured this year, there's no Rabada to pick up that slack as your 90-mile-an-hour bowler. They've got Ngidi. Or you've got some overs from Mitch Marsh or Shardul Thakur, who are both right arm medium. That's not the resilience you're looking for. They don't have that backup option. But they could be all right. They've got a good, strong lineup in Pant, Akshar Patel, Prithvi Shaw. I think they're doing all right. I think this has got a 6 out of 10 for me, kind of middling.
Yeah, I'd maybe go a little bit higher, but that's partly based on them being able to retain some pretty good players before the auction even starts. I think there's a lot here that depends on how Dave Warner and Mitchell Marsh go. If they're World Cup Dave Warner and Mitch Marsh, then you've got a top order that's Warner, Shaw, Marsh, Pant, somebody, and that's right in the top 2 or 3, or the top 3 of right. It's up there, isn't it? It's a good lineup. If it's Dave Warner from last year or the year before in the IPL, it's not very good. And I really do have severe reservations about Mitch Marsh. I don't think it's logical to spend as much money as they did on somebody that is really limited against spin for a tournament in Asia. I think It smells a bit of Ricky Ponting wanting an Australian to me, and it might not
at least
be.
it wasn't Steve Smith. It was Steve
Yeah,
Smith last year, and
no,
I'd say Mitchell Marsh
yeah.
is an upgrade on Steve Smith when it comes to T20 cricket. The only other bit on here is 5.25 for Khalil Ahmed is shocking. Bad bit of business.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it's good based on what they had going into it. I don't think the auction itself was great, is what I would say for Delhi. Ready to move on?
Yep.
We never talk about Delhi that much. I mean, for Delhi fans, like, sorry, but the problem is they're quite sensibly run, but they don't do anything extraordinarily good. So when we talk extraordinarily good, we talk Mumbai. And when we talk like heinous crimes against cricket, we talk Sunrisers. And you're stuck in the middle. But win an IPL instead of just making the final, maybe we'll change our minds. Let's move on to Kolkata Knight Riders, another one of the originals. They made a huge move early, picking up Shreyas Iyer. Because you want two Iyers, that won't be confusing at all for anyone commentating or watching. They wanted that combination. Then, and I'm not 100% sure why, they followed that up reasonably shortly afterwards by picking up Nitish Rana for another 8 crore. Now, in my mind, they basically bought the same player there and spent 20 crore on that. And I think the consequences of making that error so early have had an impact on the team they put together. I just don't see that this is very good. If you look at the kind of domestic market seam bowler that they had to pick up, Shivam Marvi, he's below the level of some of the others. If you don't buy Nitish Rana, then maybe you can compete for some of the others. That's my thinking on that. They did get Alex Hales, even though he's a wanker. I think that's quite a good pickup at base price, 1.5. And actually, I don't mind Rahane as well. I think that he could open the batting and do a job in the IPL, especially with it being slightly weaker in standard this year. The problem,
he's also good against spin, right?
Yeah.
Then there's that option, and I do think having Rahane and Iyer at the top, well, Shreyas Iyer, there's two anchors you've got there, Jack.
Yeah.
But actually, this squad actually,
well, they have that, and then Nitish Rana is really an anchor as well. So it's basically Venki Iyer better be fucking good, otherwise they're in trouble. My problem. Yeah. My problem here is that they made that mistake with Rana, and it meant they couldn't upgrade. Well, look, I've got here the difference between Billings and Bairstow is Nitish Rana. The difference between Umesh Yadav and Prasidh Krishna is Nitish Rana. The difference between Shardul Thakur and Umesh Yadav is Nitish Rana. Tim Southey could have been Lockie Ferguson, but you bought Nitish Rana, and that has this horrible impact on everything you do. I've got 3 out of 10, but only because they've got Andre Russell.
I think 3 out of 10 is a bit harsh. I think they've got some decent,
really
good play. I think they've got some.
Okay, talk to me, because they're another one of those franchises that maybe I've got a bit of blind spot for. I don't like them very much.
Yeah, so I think that's fun. But
they're named after a car. I don't really like cars.
But we talk about people's approaches to T20 cricket, right? This team doesn't seem like it's built to go and hit 200 every week. And as much as we love that as T20 fans, and we think that people should be like, I don't know, Birmingham Phoenix and run as a franchise like that, sometimes these teams are going, do you know what? We need to try something a little bit different. In Chakravarti and Narine, they're backing themselves to have 8 overs of spin that doesn't cost them too many runs, right? They've got Pat Cummins going to be in there. Shivam Marvi is going to have to up his game. I completely agree with you on that front. I think the issue that there is real potential here, but to me, I want them to be good. I don't know why. I just want them to be good. I think getting rid of Morgan was a good decision. Hilarious that they got rid of Morgan and brought in Hales. I think that's even funnier. That is
really funny. Maybe they'll make him captain. Like Edges and Sledges are in the chat. I think they just suggested that. That would be really. I mean, even though I think he is a wanker. I think. Well, look. I mean, the reason someone's asked this, he named his dog Kevin, which was like the England/Yorkshire slang name for black people. He's and that's not, that might not even be the worst of his crimes.
He's blacked up before as well.
Yeah, he has blacked up.
Like he's not.
He was involved in a street fight with Ben Stokes.
Yeah. The guy is a full sandwich short of a picnic.
Multiple bans for drug abuse.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, just not a tip-top bloke, right?
Anyway.
But yeah, so I don't think it's as bad as 3 out of 10. I think looking at their team, I think it's a little bit better than that. But I think, it's not going to be an exciting season for them unless Andre Russell is Andre Russell from what 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Well, he's been working out with the Dallas Cowboys, hasn't he? So
maybe his throwing's going to improve.
Maybe if it doesn't go well, it'll just tackle a few guys. They've got a good running back. That's the main thing that you want. Anything else on this team? We'll move on. Last 2 teams. Lucknow next.
Let's do Lucknow next.
Yeah.
So the Super Giants, I think they've done okay for their first auction. I think they've actually come away with a pretty decent top 7. We got KL Rahul, who 17 crores, an unbelievable amount of money to spend on KL Rahul. But they've partnered in with Quinton de Kock and did that very early on, right? The left-hand, right-hand combination, I think, is really useful. With Huda, again, that domestic middle order batsman it was few and far between to actually pick from that you can kind of trust to play for your team consistently, and Huda provides that. They obviously picked up Stoinis, and then have brought in Jason Holder and Pandya, and that's Krunal Pandya. I think they overspent slightly on Krunal Pandya. I don't think he's as kind of got the explosiveness that his brother has, but actually for your first year, I think that's actually a pretty good 7. Then with their options around picking, right, we needed some out-and-out pacers to make sure that we're a little bit different. They spent some money on Mark Wood, who we know is potentially made out of glass and has to be managed a certain way and might miss some of the games. But they've also got Kabira and as a backup there. And for 9.5 actually between those 2 pacers, I think actually that's pretty good value for them. Avesh Khan was the big spend at 10 crore. But again, in that market, in that bucket of domestic pacers, he's fast. He was brilliant last year, and he is still young. I think that is a good pickup. He's going to play every single game, and that was just the going rate in the market for them. They've spent big, or they've spent all of their money, and they've still got bases to be covered. But that's what happens when you give KL Rahul all your money. I think they've done, as I said, pretty well here. I reckon I'm giving this a 7 out of 10 for their first auction.
I'd say you're pretty close to the mark on that one. So I was just getting the squad list up. I had to put somebody on the naughty step in the chat. I'm not going to read out what they said because then they'd be getting what they want. But they're on the naughty step. I think like you say, Ross, I think they seem like they might be quite well run. Despite maybe overpaid for KL Rahul before the auction. They have a bunch of guys who are quite good. They're going to bat pretty deep. They got I think de Kock there, 6.7 crore, is a masterful piece of business. I think Wood is pretty good for 7.5 crore as well. They've basically come in a few categories, I think, and bought like the second best player available. At a huge discount and not that much worse than the first best player available, which is just quite a good way to build a squad, right? I think that's sort of what they've gone for. I'd give this the thumbs up.
Yeah, and they've got some backups, right, as well. So picking up Evan Lewis for at the end there actually gives them, if de Kock gets injured, you've got kind of a bit of a backup. And if they don't, you know what? We need to up this run rate and we need to build out that team. Actually, you can do that. They've got the insurance policy and Manish Pandey, and fuck, they didn't spend 10 crore on him like it went for last time. And I think when you think of some of the other players they've got, like Ravi Bishnoi in that team.
Shabazz Nadeem.
Pi Deem is in there. And I also think it's quite funny to see like what sometimes you look at players who go, oh my God, he was in there for base price and he sold for 160 times his base price. It's unbelievable. What I really like is around Krishnappa Gautam, who CSK paid 9.25 crore for last time, and he's gone for less than a crore this time. I saw this.
He didn't play a game, did he, for CSK?
That is some come down, that is.
He basically signed for a huge stack of loot, no money, and now he's off to Lucknow to presumably carry drinks there, but only on 90k for the 8 weeks work. I mean, I don't know what he'll be thinking.
Who knows? But the other bit is Akash, you're right. Sometimes I do take a dig at King Legend, but this squad actually gives him the platform to be the King Legend everyone tells me he can be.
Yeah,
So
if he can't do it here, then he
the
can't
ball
do it,
eater
can
is
he?
yeah.
Still, I don't understand. Yeah, we'll talk about King Legend. I'm sure King Legend's like the it's like a through line, isn't he? He's in Pulp Fiction. He's the gold watch, except he wasn't in. No, I'm not going to make that point.
Cannon fodder's just made me laugh. The 9.2 crore to drop catches at the boundary, which is Gotham. That is exactly what he did. So very nicely put. Very nicely put. So let's move on. We've got over 400 odd people watching this, which is absolutely fantastic. So thanks for joining. Subscribe to our channel. We're going to continue throughout the next few teams, and there's going to be so much content for IPL. We've
got one more team. Then we'll do some questions as well. So if you want to, I don't know, give us a super chat, we'll answer your question. Final team. It is the Ahmedabad boys, who are officially called the Gujarat Titans, but that's not a very good name, is it? So we're going to call them the Ahmedabad boys.
Ahmedabad boys.
I mean, why can everyone else do this? Ahmedabad boys. What are they going to do? What was it? Ahmedabad boys, bad boys. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when the auction comes to you? Well, it turns out spend quite a lot of money on not that many players, and then I think panic a little bit.
Yeah.
So they did. They obviously made the decision to pick up both Hardik and Rashid Khan for a lot of money, which cut into what they could do at the auction. In terms of where they spent their money, they went hard for Lockie Ferguson, 10 crore, which is maybe a little bit overpriced, but not ridiculous given the price that Seamers in general were going for. They brought Tawatia in, and this one does not make sense to me at all, for 9 crore, presumably to be backup to Rashid Khan. We went through the various upgrades you could have got, or KKR could have got if they hadn't picked up Nitish Rana. This is exactly that situation here. They've spent 9 crore on Tawatia. I mean, we like
Tawatia, don't we? We like him as,
yeah.
But he
might be a 9 crore player for somebody else. You're not getting it. You're not getting that value if you're this team, and then you've got 2 leg spinners. I mean, Rahul Tawatia, he's going to end up having to bat 6 and bowling like 2 overs a game or something like that, or you're going to be really one-dimensional, and everyone's just going to play a load of left-handers.
Yeah, should have spent that money on another opening batsman, right? Yeah. They should have been that's what we should have done.
Exactly. So it's after you got Tawatia. Then they bought Shami for 6.2 crore. Okay, I think, bearing in mind the price for other local quick bowlers, and then it really falls off a cliff. Yash Dayal, the next highest paid player at this franchise, 3.2 crore. It's my summary of this. If I was going to summarize it in kind of a nutshell, they've either got really good domestic scouts because they picked up sort of 3 or 4 players with that 3 in a 2 to 3 crore range. Yash Dayal, Sai Kishore, Abhinav Manohar, who have got some okay stats at a lower level, but don't have a huge sample size. So Manohar's got a strike rate of 150, but has only played 4 T20s. I think Sai Kishore, he has played 40 T20s and has an economy rate of 5.5, left arm finger spinner. That's really good, but will that work in the IPL? So there's 2 things here. Either the domestic scouting is really good and they've got a plan, or they're really disorganized, spent too much money on Hardik, on Rashid Khan and Ferguson, then panicked massively. Now, I don't know if this should factor into my thinking, but they did only name the team a week ago. So I think if I was going to bet on whether it's super scouting or panic, I'm probably going to go panic.
You know what happens when I read this team?
Yeah.
It's Sunrisers Hyderabad. They've almost gone, do you know what, Sunrisers Hyderabad? And they've probably listened to the guy in the chat earlier, which I really appreciate, but kind of said 5 out of 6, pretty good playoff record. Let's build a team kind of in that image, but with a couple of better players. When I'm looking at this, I just don't really see the batting. Like Jason Roy is in a hot vein of form. We love Jason Roy. I'll tell you all about the time I've had a beer with him. Shubman Gill is an anchor player, right? They have to. He's going to have to completely change the kind of player he is to be a real asset to this team. Hardik Pandya has been injured for the last 12 months, pretty much, and forcing it to play. And he could well be. If it's Hardik Pandya, as we said on the previous show, if it's Hardik Pandya fully fit and an incredible asset. But who in this team, Jack, do you see in the 3 and 4 slot? David Miller is garbage. Matthew Wade, other than the scoop shots he plays against Shaheen Afridi. I didn't even get
to this bit of my notes. Yeah, they just bought a random bunch of crap players.
They didn't have a wicketkeeper, and they didn't have a wicketkeeper until like about an hour before the end of the auction.
It was like, have you ever seen the program Storage Wars?
I've seen Storage Wars, yeah.
People
for containers.
For containers that they don't really know anything about. And like it could be anything in there. It could be like all of the original Elvis Presley LPs worth a fortune, or it could be like someone's subscription to the local porn mag. Like it ranges from, you know, it's wild. I think they've sort of done that. They've been like, right, we need some overseas players. We've only got 2 crore to spend, so let's just whoever comes out the hat next, let's buy them.
They could have had Sam Billings. That was the thing here. They could have had Sam Billings in that 4-5 slot, and that would have been perfect for them. But instead, they've got Matthew Wade and David Miller. David Miller, I looked at his stats. He has not done anything since 2015, and he's played in every IPL pretty much.
Matthew Wade shouldn't be at the IPL. Vijay Shankar is in this category as well for me. And like Ridhman Saha, now I at least understand why they bought him, because he is a wicketkeeper, and you do traditionally need one of those in cricket. But it is strange that you're in for a 37-year-old. Basically, Red Bull specialist.
He's also just been told that he's not being picked for his Indian domestic team. He literally has just been told that he's not good enough to play for them, and he's just been picked up in the IPL.
Yeah, they're going to have serious problems. I mean, I think there's a realistic situation here where their middle order is going to have Vijay Shankar in at 4, and this Manohar guy who has played 40 20s. He's 27 as well. He's not like an 18-year-old who's just fresh into cricket, and people are like, oh, he's a god. He's 27. He's going to be at 5.
Yeah, like Ahmedabad boys, I think, Jack, like they are going to be the team that we talk about who are trying to restrict teams. They do have a strong bowling contingent here.
They do. This is true. This is true. That's absolutely true. Any team that has Rashid Khan, Ferguson, Shami, any team that has Rashid Khan can be competitive. I think it's going to be difficult. I've given them a 3 out of 10 for this performance.
Yeah, well, in the chat, there was not much love. There was 1s out of 10s. I think this is kind of a 4 for me. Like a 4. It's a lot of things have to come together, and a lot of people have to be much better cricketers than the stats and their performances in the last couple of years suggest.
Yeah. Vijay saying Vijay Shankar at 4 is peak IPL. Well, I think I really think that might happen. I've been wrong on these things before. It might not, but I think there's a good chance. Ross, we're going to go to questions now, unless you've got anything to say.
No, all good.
Right. So there were 2 earlier on from Patreon. Well, actually, there was one super chat that came through from Akash, and we didn't read it out. Who wanted us to talk a little bit more about auction dynamics. I think that's an interesting place to start. We'll probably talk a little bit. I think we're going to do another podcast where we talk about best buys and stuff like that. So we might elaborate on this a bit more later on. But there was definitely a huge emphasis from loads of franchises on picking up anyone who can bowl fast and anybody who's Indian and can bat and bowl. And you can just see that in the prices. There was probably value to be had in overseas wicketkeeper batters. I think I mean, Sam Billings for 2 crore is pretty good. He could play for a team. That's sort of what I mean there. And I think this might be a controversial one. I think that with the expansion of the number of teams, maybe a team could have gone in really cheap on an overseas spinner. Did Zampa go and Rashid and Adil Rashid go? Neither went. I think either of them. I know 2 crore isn't super cheap, but I think they might have been good deals that didn't sell. I don't know. Is there any dynamics that you saw that you wanted to touch on?
Well, I think that point there on the overseas spinners bit is quite important to talk to, right? Because Simon Hughes, who's the analyst who has a podcast, he always has England players on, etc. He was kind of old man shouts at cloud, doing that kind of thing on Twitter, as sometimes he does, and kind of so's Michael Vaughan around Adil Rashid not being picked up. And yes, there is an argument, Jack, as you say, with the expansion of teams for them to at least get a spot in here. But I think sometimes it's quite important to explain why those people get missed. And that is just because in the domestic game in India, and when it comes to the IPL, there's just a glut of supply of like pretty handy spinners. Let's be honest. Like actually, the range that you get from Rashid Khan kind of being up here through to actually I don't know who's a middling spinner like Rahul Chahal, right? Rahul Chahal. He's up there in the bit, but then the next bit down actually isn't that far of a gap really of what you're getting. And if you're only going to be bowling kind of 4 overs, actually it's much easier to try and find a bit of value there in the domestic market than potentially like wasting an overseas spot because you're going to only play 4 of them.
Yeah, but there are going to be some bad overseas players. I mean, I think with the expansion, you're at the point where what is the difference here between Coulter Nile and Adam Zampa? Now, Coulter Nile is going to play games, Adam Zampa isn't, but what do they actually give to you? I think basically the more people you have in bowling seam, the worse the overseas quality of seamer gets. So you might as well get a foreign spinner in. There aren't that many foreign spinners you get, and I wouldn't want to pay more than base price for them. But I think that was potentially an area that you could have had a bit of value. We'll move on.
Chattel has highlighted that Chiksana from Sri Lanka was picked up by CSK. Obviously, Rashid Khan's in that space. But yeah, the overseas spot is the main problem there.
So the 2 questions that we had on Patreon, Larniod says, do you think that overall the money was spent on positions that you guys thought they would be? Intent and 6 hitting, all-rounders, pay seemed to go for big money. Uncapped Indian all-rounders section on day one was literally insane. So that's kind of what we're saying there, isn't it, Ross? I thought mostly money was spent where I thought it would go in terms of positions. There were a couple I got wrong. I didn't think Tripathi would go for the amount that he went for example. Nitish Rana went for a lot more than I thought that he would go for.
But middle order batting talent in the domestic market was really kind of hot property. I think where I was surprised, and I know that Harshal Patel got the purple cap last year, but the amount of money that was funneled for medium pacers in this was really quite staggering. And it kind of shows kind of some of the trends of what people do, kind of the bowling cutters into the pitch and kind of the variations that you're trying to get to there, and the kind of what that skill set is kind of in kind of a rare supply in India.
We're going to speed through some questions now. Is Faf worth the money, Ross?
No.
That's it from Patreon. I'll go over to Twitter. Do we have anything in the live chat that we?
Callum Fodder is saying bad example when you compared Coulter Nile to Adam Zampa, because Nathan Coulter Nile combat a bit, which is true. But the net you're really getting isn't considerable.
Yeah, I do have to come up with an example on the spot here. I haven't done like loads of analysis on who's not as good as Adam Zampa, and I don't think that Adam Zampa would be nailed on. He'd be like your 5th option. What's the DY Patil Stadium? That's probably the one where you might want an extra spinner. You might actually want a good spinner instead of just somebody who can send down over 7, 9, 11, and 13. Like you might want someone who can win the game for you. And Zampa probably could do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Akash has come back saying that the timing of appearance of the player has a huge impact on their price, which is probably a fair shout. I still think there was bargains to be had though. I think getting Ashwin for 5 crore was actually pretty bloody good, and he was first out the hat. So
yeah. I'm not 100% sold on Ashwin in T20s. Right, Ross. So I haven't pre-read any of these questions, so this could be a disaster. BCCI, the actual BCCI has dropped us a tweet though. Titans have had the worst auction and Punjab the best. Do you agree? I think we said SRH worst, Mumbai best. But yeah, in terms of actual auction, Punjab arguably did do the best.
Yeah, I still think Sunrisers, but yeah, Sunrisers was definitely the worst, and I think it's probably a tie between Mumbai Indians and Punjab Kings.
A few other people asking how bad Sunrisers were. I think we covered how bad Sunrisers were,
and we'll do more. We will do more. Don't you worry.
Yeah. It's not over. If you're listening to this, you're a Sunrisers fan, and you think this is the end of us taking the mick out of your terrible team.
Sorry.
Maybe find another cricket podcast. Here you go. Vinay asks, which is the worst buy, Puran, Parag, or Tawatia?
Puran, Parag, or Tawatia.
Puran, too much money. He's a good player. Should be in the IPL. Yeah, he isn't better than Quinton de Kock. Yeah. Just fact, he isn't. So why have you spent 10 crore on him? There you go. How would you rank the following in terms of value? I like these questions. Butler at 10 crore, Bairstow at 6.5, Roy at 2, and Hales at 1.5. That's from Alex Botting.
Yeah, I think if you look at the value there, I think Butler as a retention makes a lot of sense. Like if Butler in that bid in the pool today to go big would have gone like around the Ishan Kishan money. He's that supreme. Yeah, he's that. Yeah. I think he's that good, and offers so much with the bat that it'd be difficult not to do. Or maybe 12 crore, I reckon, 13 crore, something like that. So he's value for money there. Jason Roy is on some hot form at the moment, and surprised that he didn't go for a little bit more than that, especially as some of the teams could have done with a bit of firepower. Bairstow is an absolute steal. I think Bairstow is up there as one of the best overseas batting options that you could possibly get, and he keeps, and he was also a gun fielder. Alex Hales, we've not seen him play in the IPL, and when we've
for
seen
a long time, and twice.
Yeah,
he's the guy who gets caught by AB de Villiers when he does that leaping boundary catch, like running around one-handed. That's Alex Hales' contribution to the IPL canon.
Yeah, I think that's actually a fair whack for Alex Hales at 1.5 crore.
Yeah.
A little bit underappreciated Jason Roy, but yeah, Bairstow bargain bucket, that one, and Butler fair price for retention.
We'll do a couple more Twitter ones and then anything in the chat and then wrap up. Daniel Young asks, and this is a really interesting question. Please explain why Mumbai Indians didn't just retain Ishan Kishan. If they were so desperate to have him back and pay top dollar, why not retain him and not Pollard or even Rohit and then buy one of them back? Don't think either of them would have cost 15.5 crore, would they? So first of all, they couldn't have retained Pollard because the rules were that you could only retain a maximum of 3 Indian players. So you are right, Pollard would have gone for less, but the law's the law. I think here, Ross, this was Mumbai Indians basically asking themselves who it would hurt most to lose, or who had a skill set that was hardest to replicate. Now, Rohit Sharma is the captain and the kind of emotional choice. It's quite difficult. I mean, if someone else really wanted Rohit Sharma, and bear in mind here that they might not have gone to auction, he could have gone to Lucknow or to the bad boys. That would have been quite sad, I think, for Mumbai Indians, and they'd have got a lot of grief for that. Surya Kumar Yadav is, super dynamic. I think probably a bit
more experience. He's got a bit more experience.
Better player than Ishan Kishan. If they lost him at auction, I don't think they'd be able to replace him. Ishan Kishan wouldn't be a good enough replacement, or wouldn't be the same quality of player. Bumrah, one of a kind. You can't not have him. So Ishan Kishan had to go as the weakest, or the player that they could afford to lose most out of the Indian players they had. Now, I think there was it was realistic to expect that Ishan Kishan might go for more than the other 3 at the auction, but he is fundamentally a worse player here and now. And I say worse player, though. He's not a bad player, but he is a less great player, is probably a better way of putting it. That's sort of how I looked at that roster. I don't know if you had another thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I also think that I don't understand why teams don't look to retain 4 players, because you kind of get a discount. And I know Deepak Patel in the chat's kind of saying, well, you still lose some money. You lose like 9 crore a player, and the player only gets 6. And is that unfair? Now, Harshal Patel came out and said, RCB talked to me and said, we'd rather get you back in the auction potentially for less than 9 crore, and so you can have a bit more money because you deserve it. Bullshit. They just fucked up their retention strategy badly, and that was rubbish from them.
Yeah. Ross, anything in the live chat that's caught your fancy before we wrap up this quite long live stream?
Some Earth has asked, "Will you be my Valentine?" Depends how much you pay me. And then the other parts, I think we're good. We've had an absolutely fantastic interaction on this, and there's been over 400 people viewing this live stream. So thank you ever so much. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and if you want access to special shows or exclusive shows, not special shows,
they are special shows.
They are special, and the TCP Discord channel, then sign up for Patreon. It's only $5 a month.
It is. Yeah, and you also get, we didn't mention this earlier, so you also get the whole history of the IPL, the data and sorted and usable. If you're interested in data, I know a lot of people are. We've got a good file that you can have for free, which we use ourselves. Patreon.com/the cricket pod. We did have 3 new members sign up as well on YouTube. So thank you for that. Although I didn't read your names out at the time, but thank you 3. We'll be back another time. Goodbye.